So good afternoon, very good afternoon, Sawasdika. Well, apart from my colleague here, which comes from the business sector, I will talk and share with you some of the initiatives that the government of Indonesia have worked on, especially in developing the government services using the cloud computing approach. So let me try quickly to go through this slide. So ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we believe that in terms of technology development in computing in ICT, we actually end up with several extremes that will enable innovation. From the technology side, there's a technology push extreme. From the marketplace, there is some follower that you have to be innovative every time you produce something. And from the user side, that users expect better services, higher quality, probably at a cheaper price. Yeah. So all this drives innovation to all of us. And government is one of the sector that also have to be innovative in terms of doing their business. So what we see that the cloud probably is one of the key factor in driving the innovation. Leveraging on the elasticity and on-demand availability of cloud infrastructures will enable us for the government, especially for the Indonesia government with so many local independent government have to use various methods in order for them to catch up for the growth of ICT. And I think in this case, cloud really shows one potential innovation approach for the government in terms of making use of the ICT. So we see that cloud is the innovation enabler. It gives you all the possibilities to use ICT where you were hindered from using it because of your low budget and highly cost infrastructures in various area of the government sector. Especially for the local government in Indonesia, we are geographically dispersed as wide as United States, from west to east. 17,000 islands, not all of them are populated, but certainly the government have so much challenge, so many challenges in terms of building the infrastructures for all the local governments. So what we see, cloud gives you an advantage in terms of deploying government services nationwide. I understood most of you already understand the advantage of cloud at the software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, putting emphasis on the infrastructure side that this will be lower cost of ownership. Basically, you own nothing actually in the cloud, but you can use the cloud, pay per use, pay on demand. Ubiquitous network access is very advantageous for using the cloud. Reduce infrastructure management and other things. So interestingly, most of the government agencies, local governments in Indonesia, with as wide as a very mature local government having really big data center, and while the others local government doesn't have anything. or probably they just started to build a local area network in their office, right? So what we see is that potentially most of the agencies are already built an architectures on their IT system using service-oriented architectures, and this is already merged with cloud computing in the sense that some of the shared services, shared information, shared processes are being delivered through the cloud computing as service on demand, database on demand, application on demand, and platform on demand. So what we see, there is a transformation of how we do business in terms of the government built up on using ICT for the government services. Many ministries, many agencies, many institutions, government institutions. I think this is very much a common approach in many of the governments, especially in this region, in Southeast Asia, where most of the ministry builds all the all the requirement for ICT services, on their own stake. So, for example, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense, and Ministry of Social Welfare will own each of them a data center, which basically, will cost the government multiples in terms of delivering the ICT budget. So what we see is that based using standardization and creating a vertical and horizontal silos will enable us to move from this silos approach to a cloud computing architectures. And this already being developed in Indonesia. Recently, many local governments have already used cloud computing in terms of sharing the application and sharing the data. I will show you some of the thing that makes the cloud computing interesting for the government, especially for a lower budget regional governments, where they can basically rely on government service provider to enable them for IT availability and also reliability, and then focus on their content of application or application. And this can really seen by our development in BPPT. We have a government secure intranet run by IPTECnet as one of our unit, where we actually provide end-to-end coverage of security and availability and reliability of assessing some of a standard application throughout all local government institution. And this is basically shows you that all these dreams that you can treat all the let's say low budget local government, medium budget global government, or even the richer local government where they have the whole province as a coal mine, right? So they are very plentiful in budget. Sees that cloud computing is a match in made in heaven for delivering this standard application across government institution. And this shows you some of the initiatives that are already being done, a general view of what we call government knowledge cloud created by BPPT, and this is being shared across ministries, agencies, and other local agencies. One case study that I think directly applicable to what we can do across ASEAN government is the recently launched the Indonesian EID, or we call IKTP. I think I spoke earlier to one of the governor, which in Thailand, where actually it takes you 8 years to create a smart card-based ID, and Indonesia recently, within these 3 years, needs to produce some fantastic number of IDs, 172 million within these 2 years, where this 172 million residents of EID holder of Indonesia is distributed among 6,400 something districts nationwide. And this says that you really have to mobilize the people to do this EID. We are fortunate that our Ministry of Home Affairs, who owns these projects, and BPPT is the technical advisor and technical assistance toward the Ministry of Home Affairs, were able to come up with a specification that make use of the cloud computing infrastructures in terms of mobilizing all the enrollment station, a standard application across all these 6,000 districts throughout Indonesia. And I think in terms of what we can achieve in Indonesia is very well adaptable to be launched towards ASEAN interoperability of EID. What thing that we see from this EID is that using the cloud computing infrastructures, I think I also met Damian a couple of years ago and shows him the data center in our data center as a data recovery center in Batam, that we want to launch not only the unique identity as a part of securing our national identity, but also toward all the possibilities in terms of public services on the net. Yeah, that means you can access electronic voting in one region using the cloud. You can also access healthcare. You can do a standard government good governance application using the cloud, as well as healthcare. One thing that we want to implement this very quickly is how we can enable the cloud to be used for incorporating with ASEAN countries in terms of workers. Yeah. High traffic workers among ASEAN countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, where there is a lot of, let's say, transnational or human illegal trafficking can be actually solved by using interoperability of this EID. And what we see that after our single use in these few years toward, let's say, 2015, we should be able to come up and probably put in some initiatives in our ASEAN Open 2015, toward 2015, that all the EID among the ASEAN countries can be interoperable. And that means that you really need to build a good cloud infrastructure to be shared across Asian nations. Thank you very much for the question.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hammam. So it's a very aggressive project you have. See, in Thailand, whenever we talk about implementing cloud computing for government, the hot issue of governance and security always pop up. Yes. How you address this in Indonesia about the governance and the security issue?
Yeah, basically, our project here for the EID is basically to tackle those two issues very deeply. For many years, all these citizen database resided in only one area, in one province or in one district, would not be able to be shared. So the security of having multiple identity because it's being forged is easy to forge. If you want to own a land in Sumatra or in other, let's say in Java, then you have to forge your identity because the law was saying like that. Or if you want to marry twice or three times in different provinces, you have to also forge your identity. So the unique identity using the single identity is basically going to the base of the problem, to the root of the problem because of the fraud and forgery of identity. And I hope by having this, that's why in the single use, it is how you basically authenticate the identity. In our EID, we use multimodal biometrics in order for us to secure the identity of, so we enroll all the 10 fingers of each citizen and also including iris into our identity card. It is stored in the big data, this big data also in our centralized data center.
Okay, thank you. I guess we still have about 5 to 10 minutes left. I'd like to invite all the panelists to share your thoughts about, say, after the ASEAN integration in 2015, what can you see the role of this cloud computing technology for ASEAN, so that the whole ASEAN community can transform or reform, whatever you call it, the business in this region? BS, we have a while ago touched a little bit on this issue, right?
So,
Damian, you want
so I think, obviously the key here is all around agility, okay? And I think to the point that was made earlier on is that never has there been so many computing resources that are easily available to anyone who wants them when they want them, okay? So this, from an economic activity perspective, opens up, if you like, a new approach in many ways as to the use of computing power and how you use that for competitive advantage. So when we talk about cloud computing, we are really at a transition. I talked to earlier on about the mainframe, and then we went to client server, and then the web happened, and now we're at this effectively cloud, right, where everything's being centralized again, right, to the point about identity cards here, but everything is going central again. Yeah. And then we're living now in the post-PC era, right? So I bet nearly everyone here has some sort of smart device. And the key is everyone wants everything on that device, but that device actually isn't powerful enough to do that. So that predicates the fact that all that has to run as a service in a data center somewhere, right? And then it has to be delivered to those endpoints. So I think the power of cloud is, as I say, the applications as well. So the social applications, all aware of Facebook, etc., right? And the effect that has in terms of, if you like, shortening or bringing together people. I lived in Australia for many years, and we used to talk about the tyranny of distance, right? The place is so big, right? But with these type of technologies, you make it a lot smaller and you make it a lot more intimate. So a lot of the work that Cisco is doing around collaboration is basically enabling people to collaborate in the workspace, to become more efficient in terms of how they share information, how they collaborate in terms of ideas, how they communicate face-to-face even at distance. And from our point of view, we're putting all this in the cloud, okay? So we have the capability to put this in terms of what we term hosted collaboration services, put all these activities in the cloud. If we talk at a government context, you could potentially run a centralized collaboration in terms of social media for business, IP telephony, voice, video, and data. You run that as a centralized resource for the whole of government, yeah? And I think that really is that's the key. And then from a Cisco perspective, believe it or not, we have all the bits now. So we have all the bits from the application all the way down to the actual end device, okay? And because we are the bit, we also, our tradition is the bit in the middle, the network, which was the original cloud. Remember, the network was always drawn as a cloud. And because we've been at this a long time, we're now able to differentiate services across that network. So you think about mobile, okay? The big growth in mobile is not in voice, it's in data, right? Because of those end devices, right? Now, if you're a service provider, right, you maybe want to start differentiating by type of client. So, for example, you may have a data Facebook-only service, right, that you might want to offer to an end client. Or you might want to offer guaranteed certain amounts of bandwidth to a particular business user, yeah? So in order to do that, you really have to have smarts and very granular smarts from both a security and quality of service perspective in the network. So that's the network piece. Then when you talk to the end device, you need to secure that end device. So again, if you want to go to Cisco stand, we talk about the fact that we're able to secure end devices. So based on who you are, what type of device you are, and where you are, and the time of day, we can dictate what resources you have access to across the cloud. And then we offer the capability to consolidate all that information into our unified computing platform within the data center. So we think this is a very exciting time. We think we're uniquely positioned in the market as Cisco, but I think more important at an ASEAN level, this essentially makes the ASEAN region a lot smaller, a lot more intimate, and it encourages business activity. And to the point, small, medium business, they don't have to have a telephone instrument on their desk anymore. They don't have to have a server, okay? They just actually sign up to a service in the cloud, and when they don't need it anymore, they cancel it. Or if they expand and they're massively successful, then you just essentially sign up for another service. So I think this is really a transition, and when you talk about Gartner, they always talk about the hype curve. You know, you go up everything gets hyped, and then you fall into the, I think they call it the trough of disillusionment, and then you come up the slope of enlightenment, right? So we're definitely on the slope of enlightenment now, right? The kind of hype is gone. The next thing coming is big data, right? That's on the horizon. But if you couple big data with cloud, then there's a whole world of new possibilities that come out in terms of being able to draw meaning from the massive amounts of information or data, I should say. Data is just data, okay? If it's a number, what does that number relate to? Is it my age? Is it my shoe size? Okay, you have to have context around what the information is, and that's what big data is all about, finding that context. So that would be my view on.
Okay. Yeah, you have.
If I may add on. If I may add, actually, one of the points that we've made earlier is that the cloud is benefiting the medium-sized company or the large-sized company. Actually, in Asia, and the large-sized company are medium-sized, compared to the worldwide. So what I'm seeing is like, the cloud is providing, this ability for the Asian companies to be much more competitive, benefiting from technology and services that have been built, outside of ASEAN, and actually allowing ASEAN to grow much faster than if they had to reinvent the wheel. So now, between now and 2016, what ASEAN can do is actually build on this and provide services that are more relevant for Asian companies themselves, providing differentiated services, whether they are local services because of culture or languages type of demand, or they are just catching up, and instead of having to buy a SAP system for X million dollars, can go and just subscribe to Salesforce.com. So that's kind of the things that we are doing as well. So this is giving agility. This is giving the ability for ASEAN to really ramp up, and while using those services, building the competency internally to catch up much quicker than the other, whether it's Europe or the US that had to learn the hard way how to create this kind of technology. So you shorten the time to value for this region.
Thank you. BS, you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a data point just as a perspective to support Damian's comment about that the cloud really is here to stay. From a storage perspective, if you look at today, I mentioned earlier about 380 exabytes of data that's being consumed today. Today, about approximately 70% of that 380 exabytes actually reside on what we call the client side, right? On your PCs, your notebook, your tablet. your mobile phones or whatever, all of the storage, right? It resides there. Probably about between 5 to 7 years from now, it's going to flip the other side, where 70% of all storage that's consumed will reside in the cloud, right? So that's the extent of how quickly this is going to grow and how beneficial it will be, you know, for all of us.
That's interesting.
Yes, thank you. Apart from what the gentleman has already mentioned, I would like you all to see the cloud computing as a tool, because from the provider perspective, coming from that angle, you use this one as a tool for like business expansion or even the risk management perspective. For example, like today in the current environment, you will see all the earthquake, all the flooding, all the unexpected event happening all around across the regions. And by leverage cloud computing as a tool to use that, so that instead of putting your own information physically in your own company, then you can right now putting it on the cloud where you probably may not know where is it running from, but then you have to make sure that you have access to that information whenever that you are needed.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask the audience. Does anyone in the audience have any points or any question you might want to ask, or you want to comment on the issue we've been discussing? Anything at all? Yes, please. Okay.
I think some of you have rightly pointed out, apart from few countries, many of the ASEAN countries lack infrastructure and connectivity. So all these countries independently will be investing a lot of money in next 5 to 10 years. Instead of doing that, in certain areas, can we, the ASEAN can collaborate on a single cloud platform? On certain government services can be collaborated. I do understand everything cannot be collaborated, like security, defense, or commercials. But there are surveys that Indonesia has been done successfully. It could be done on a more holistic manner in the ASEAN side. So it would be leveraging, investing, everybody investing, it would be a lot of money would be required. Because only in this area, Asia and ASEAN as a whole is a lot far behind from the West. We are very much behind in the technology, especially on the innovation. We are not harnessing the power of the cloud. So how cloud can harness the power of crowd, which is a new buzz. We haven't talked about that. So we are actually not thinking most of the intelligent crowd that we have in this ASEAN region. So if you can highlight those issues a little more. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Anybody care to mention, is the ASEAN cloud possible?
I think even though it is not terminology as a buzzword of cloud, but actually we've seen ASEAN single window. Have you heard about this term, right? ASEAN single window, which is one of the initiative runs by the ASEAN to create a standard portal, a standard gateway for the export-import of goods among ASEAN countries. Yeah, this is something that I think can be leveraged and upgraded probably toward a cloud infrastructure. We don't have to choose a highly sophisticated application area for this. I think one of there are already so many issues in terms of ASEAN. Just one issues that probably came out of the many telecommunication senior official meetings is how you create ASEAN internet exchange, for example. This is actually some good case study where actually we can propose a cloud-based infrastructures toward this goal of having ASEAN internet exchange. So I think in some of the session also here, we are talking about how we can have a unified gateway for the whole internet traffic toward ASEAN countries. Yeah. Now there are many discussions among the telecommunication sectors to do this. But I think you have a very good point, that we need to choose one application area where the cloud computing is readily implementable to solve the whole ASEAN issues. Yeah. One of the ASEAN issues.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
I think.
FP, you want to add? Okay, you first.
Thank you. As part of the provider in the private sectors, what we have done with our alliance member is that we create what we call Asian Data Center Alliance, whereby we join force with 4 other countries. We have Thailand, we have Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, 5 countries. What we did is that as data center providers, we now try to standardize the service that we are offering to our own customers, and then being a single point of contact for the customer. So whoever want to use the services of within our own region, for example, the MNC coming from the US side, then they can contact just only one person, and we could altogether provide the services to them. This is part of one of the example of initiative that we have done.
This is a private sector initiative.
This is the private sector.
I see. And who is driving? Actually, who is the prime mover of this project?
T.C.C. Technology, we are one of the founding members.
I see.
Under ADCA, yes.
PF, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add onto the single cloud or what the infrastructure. I'd just like to summarize the definition of the cloud just one more time. It's whatever it is, it's a service, whether it's storage, it's a pass or whatever. It's a service over broadband and elastic, right? One of the key points here is broadband or communication, whether it's inside of your own data center or if it's in Rajanpat, middle of nowhere. So, and that's something that's going to ensure that Damian is not running out of work for the next decade at least. But what is important here is that you can build extra data center, you can consolidate it, and you're saying Google is you're using everywhere, so that's social media, but you have other services now that are leveraging cloud concepts that are available. But what is important is, can your customers or can your users use it? What is the quality of service behind it, right? How do you measure this? Do you ensure that, because, the new generation, the Gen Y, Gen Z, if it doesn't work, they go somewhere else, they go do something else without any remorse. So it's all good to create, to think about all those data centers or way of providing new services, but you need to ensure that you have the infrastructure so it can be consumed, the service can be consumed.
Good. So, yes? Oh, sure.
Just one last point. I think one of the barriers to the discussion on this is data sovereignty and laws governing data sovereignty. So I was talking to a bank the other week that are based across many of the ASEAN countries. In fact, and they have many data centers, and the challenge is they'd like to have just 2, right? But because of the relative, monetary authority laws and sovereignty laws, etc., that becomes difficult. You take somewhere like Europe, right? Data must reside in Europe, right? So it's a Europe-wide data sovereignty law as opposed to an individual country. So I think we're out of time. So sorry, but I think that's a relevant point.
Okay.
Last
comment.
Yeah, last comment is I think just to conclude that discussion, right? Technology is there, right? So basically, the technology is around to be able to have that solution, right? So it's just a question of infrastructure, which obviously can be addressed, but the more difficult one is all about policy and strategy. And I think it's a very noble idea, because I think it really will help the development, especially of the developing countries. So it's a question of the relevant authorities getting together and agreeing on what they want to do.
Thank you. I wish we had 2 more hours to talk about this subject. Very interesting. Okay, I think we run out of time and we have to stop. And please join me to give a big hand to our panelists. And thank you very much for your listening. So I turn the program to our lady MC.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoo. It's very useful and very fruitful discussion. We should have more time. Before we end this session, let me inform you that all the conference will be broadcast live through techtvthailand.com, so you can tell your friends to join us, okay? And please come back here at 3:45 and enjoy your coffee break. All right, I'll see you. Bye.